All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time we've concluded the presentation of the evidence. We're going to move into the closing arguments of counsel. Ms. Nicholson, you go first.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defendant has two charges in this case. Count one is aggravated trafficking in drugs. That on or about July 28th, 2024 in Warren County, Ohio, the defendant knowingly prepared for shipment, shipped, transported, delivered, prepared for distribution, or distributed methamphetamine when the defendant intended to sell or resell. There's also going to be an additional finding. If you find the defendant guilty of this, you're going to ask if the weight of the methamphetamine equals or exceeds 5 times bulk, but is less than 50 times the bulk amount of methamphetamine. Well, you heard from Mr. Carney himself. Nothing's free in prison. Right? Everything costs something. Commissary, hygiene. Everything you do in prison costs something. 51 grams of meth, the only purpose of that in a prison is to give it to other people. Mr. Carney never touched those drugs. I don't dispute that. They were never in his possession. Agreed. That's correct. They don't have to be. Remember the bank robbery from voir dire. The getaway driver, the planner, and the guy with the gun. They're all responsible. You heard testimony from Sergeant Burke that he found in the trash can the Cheetos bag with a condom in it full of 51 grams of methamphetamine. They were left there for retrieval. Israel Farley retrieved a decoy package the next day. You heard that that's a common way for drugs to be conveyed. That's not out of the ordinary. The fact that they didn't make it any further into the institution, not relevant. Onto the grounds of a detention facility. There's no specificity. They have to make it into a cell. They have to make it onto the grounds of a detention facility. And they were dropped in the women's restroom of the front entry of Warren Correctional Institution. He's not in a position to do anything himself. He's sitting in prison. So he needs other people to do it for him. And yeah, we don't hear on the phone calls, please bring me 51 grams of methamphetamine in a flaming hot Cheetos bag and wrapped in a condom and drop it in the bathroom trash can for Israel Farley to pick up. That wouldn't be very smart, would it? You heard Sergeant Klons testify. Those calls are recorded. They know that. It's on that little intro. Those calls were monitored. Those are some key words there that they don't want to use. So it's of no surprise to anybody that we don't have a call that says, bring me in drugs, because that would be dumb on Mr. Carney's part. So he uses coded language. That's typical in these cases. He speaks in code, bring the flaming, bring the glass house with that gift from my son in it. And then Kalia Carney walks it in her pants and drops it in the trash can. Everything that happened on July 28th of 2024 happened because of that man right there. At his direction, at his instruction. Specific instruction. Get you a bag of flaming hot chips. Eat the chips, leave the bag. I'm going to show you what to do with it. Bring that flaming in the glass house. When you pull up, the plan, give to Lily. You got my flaming? Don't forget the flaming. Make sure you bring my flaming. He couldn't have been more adamant about it. And that's because he knew that flaming contained something for him. Ladies and gentlemen, the state has met its burden, proven all of these elements to you beyond a reasonable doubt, and we would ask that you return a verdict of guilty. Thank you.
A reason why a solid half of the Bill of Rights pertain to the rights of the accused, right, in criminal proceedings. And that is because the Founding Fathers, and we up to this day, consider the rights of individuals to be extremely powerful and valuable, right? It is the burden of the state. I've been talking about this since the first time we spoke. It's the burden of the state to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the allegations in each and every case. Ms. Nicholson just pointed out, hey, it would be preposterously foolish, right, to mention drugs directly on a call because that's going to get your calls flagged. Mr. Carney must be speaking in code. However, he's explicitly talking about Cheetos bags over and over and over. He's such a clever operator that he would never deign to mention drugs, right? But on the other, he's talking about the chips. And so, I just want to point that out. I think it's indicative of kind of some of the assumptions, and the conjecture that has gone into the state's kind of investigation and their conclusion on this case, right? There are ways to prove all of this, right, pretty conclusively. Where was Mr. Farley's testimony, right? We never heard from White Mike. We never heard from Adrian Johnson, right? We don't have body cams of, setting up this alleged decoy. We don't even know, what was in the decoy. We never heard from Mr. Farley. Mr. Farley is the one with access to that bathroom, who had either drugs or what he thought were in fact drugs on his person. We never heard any testimony about any kind of connection between Mr. Carney and Mr. Farley. There's some idea that maybe they both know White Mike. Who's White Mike? We never heard from White Mike. We never heard any testimony establishing, even if Mr. Carney was in that horticulture class, was Mr. Farley? We don't know. We never heard from anyone in that class, right? It kind of looked to me like investigators kind of looked down the roster, checked some boxes, and went about their merry way, right? They heard phone calls talking about chips. They found the chip bag in the trash. That's enough for them. Case closed. See you later. The Kalia intended to visit her father that day. She was taken to the wrong jail, wrong prison. Lebanon and Warren are right next to each other down the street here. She was taken to the wrong one. She had to walk in the rain. Right? She said herself during her testimony, she had to clean herself up. She went into the bathroom. She wiped herself off with paper towels. There were paper towels in the trash can. Right? We don't have any idea of who else was in the bathroom that weekend. We do know that that bathroom was last cleaned on Friday and then went back in on Sunday. Right? We have testimony that that bathroom is open to the general public. We have testimony that there are incidences where COs or staff bring in contraband. We don't have additional surveillance footage that I believe, and I put it to you, would be extremely valuable in helping to solve this case. We don't know who else was in that bathroom. We don't see Sergeant Burke go into the bathroom to investigate. We don't see his body cam. We don't see the overview. We don't see the surveillance. We don't see him set up this decoy package, right? Because none of it, either it wasn't recorded or that recording was not played or provided for us. Under 200 to 300 cameras in this facility, there's no surveillance of them having a shared conversation somewhere, in the back of the horticulture class. We don't know if they've ever spoken. No evidence of any plan to distribute anything. No cash out. No financial trades. Not even like, hey, I put $50 on your commissary. We don't have anything like that, right? Because no money traded hands, because no drug trafficking took place. So, ladies and gentlemen, jury, thank you. Again, pay attention to the evidence and render your appropriate verdict.
Thank you, Mr. Brenner. Ms. Nicholson?
Adrian Johnson says she's got a bag of Flamin' Hot and an egg roll. Investigator Chamberlain testified it could have been the trash can, it could have been the pack itself that Glasshouse was referring to. Mr. Carney wants you to believe it's something dropped in the bushes for somebody named Aaron. Ladies and gentlemen, you are allowed to and encouraged to use your common sense in this case. And I ask you to do so. Two things can be true. Kalia could be there for a visit with her dad, and Kalia could be there to drop drugs on her way in. But the fact that she was there for a visit, why would she have a visit? Well, you heard it is probably the most common way that drugs are brought into the prison is at a visitation. So the fact that she's on the visit list, and why would she also bring drugs to a visit? Well, that's how it works. It's the most common way for it to be done. And he wants you to believe that Kalia got up there and just 100% lied. Ladies and gentlemen, does that make any sense? You all witnessed her testimony yesterday. She looked like somebody who just completely made up that story. She hated being here. She's here because he made her be here. He put her in this position. And she got up there and she told you the truth. Because her testimony is consistent with the phone calls. Her testimony is consistent with the surveillance video. And her testimony is consistent with the messages she has with her dad. Do you know what Mr. Carney's testimony is consistent with? Absolutely nothing. It does not match any of the other evidence in this case. The defendant would have you believe he's talking about literal snacks on these phone calls. Bring me chips, bring me Gatorade. I just love Flamin' Hot chips. They're my favorite. So I guess it's just a coincidence that somebody used that exact same time frame as we're talking about to drop off 51 grams of meth in a condom that looks suspiciously like an egg roll, in a Flamin' Hot chips bag, in the bathroom at Warren Correctional, at the same exact time his daughter's there. That's just, I guess, a mighty coincidence. A coincidence that an inmate he's had no involvement with, no connection with, Israel Farley, names Philly to prison investigators as the person he's there to give it to. Ladies and gentlemen, just because an explanation is the simplest one doesn't mean it's wrong. Then it is so important, this bag of Flamin' Hot chips that are literally just food, that he calls Adrian at 12:30 in the morning. That silver sedan starts to pull out of the parking lot at 3:30 and some seconds. 3:31, she's already messaging her dad. He wants you to believe it's now about some visit form that she clearly did not have. Okay, you okay? And you leave it? Again, he wants us to believe this is a visit form. Yep, it's secured. I was on right side. Clea told you that was the right side of the trash can. She's also in the bathroom on the right side. Nothing about that message reads like we're talking about a visit form. Kalia didn't tell you. She didn't mention anything about a visit form. Her testimony is undisputed. You haven't heard anything that contradicts her testimony other than the self-serving testimony of the defendant. The state has met its burden. Use your common sense. Look at what evidence matches, what evidence is consistent with the testimony that you heard in this case. Based on all of that, the state is going to ask that you find that everything on July 28, 2024 at Warren Correctional Institution began and ended with Kenneth Carney. And we're going to ask that you find him guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. In the matter of the state of Ohio versus Kenneth Carney, the verdict form as to count one reads as follows. We, the jury, being duly impaneled, sworn or affirmed, find the defendant, Kenneth Carney, guilty of aggravated trafficking in drugs as he stands charged in the indictment. This verdict form is signed by all 12 members of the jury. As to the additional finding to count one, we, the jury, find the amount of methamphetamine involved in the offense was equal to or in excess of 5 times the bulk amount, but less than the 50 times bulk amount. This additional finding is also signed by all 12 members of the jury. As to count two, we, the jury, being duly impaneled, sworn or affirmed, find the defendant, Kenneth Carney, guilty of illegal conveyance of drugs of abuse under the grounds of a specified government facility as he stands charged in the indictment. This verdict form is also signed by all 12 members of the jury. Does the state want the jury polled?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Does the defense want the jury polled?
No, Your Honor.
Before I pronounce sentence, anything from the state?
Your Honor, the court heard the testimony in this case. The court's aware of the facts. The defendant has an extensive history of drug trafficking dating back to at least 2006. This was 51 grams of methamphetamine that he got his daughter with no criminal history to bring into the Warren Correctional Institution for him. And the court heard his testimony. So we would ask you to consider all of that and impose a sentence of at least 6 years.
Mr. Brenner, anything on behalf of the defendant?
Thank you, Your Honor. I've gotten to know Mr. Carney pretty well over the last couple months I've been on this case. I think he's a polite man. I think he's an affable man. I know the court's aware he's been transferred to Lucasville. It's a much higher security level. I know that is not enjoyable for him. I think he's already faced some consequences. I would ask this court to issue an appropriate sentence on the lower end, as I think it's notable. Obviously, none of the contraband was ever actually possessed by Mr. Carney.
Mr. Carney, is there anything you'd like to say before I sentence you?
I'll just apologize. There's nothing I can say. Apologize to the court. I have nothing to do with it. I still remain innocent, but
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I still remain, innocent to where I didn't do it, but there's nothing I can do about it. I can just apologize to the court. That's all.
Court has considered the statements made here today, the purposes and principles of sentencing, the relevant seriousness and recidivism factors. There are two offenses here. The court does find that they are offenses of dissimilar import and do not merge for the purposes of sentencing. Anything on that?
No, the state would agree.
Your Honor, I would ask for them to merge, but I do believe that under Ohio law that they would not automatically merge.
All right, on count one, then the court will order you to serve a minimum term before I get to that, Mr. Carney, first off, shame on you. Just absolutely shame on you for dragging your young daughter, who you profess to love, into this. I quite frankly agree with the jury's verdict. I don't often do this. This is probably the second time in 10 years that I've actually sentenced a defendant in front of a jury, and I'm doing it for a reason. Because just absolutely shame on you for putting your daughter through this and having her face an indictment with mandatory prison. Luckily for you, I think that the state, and I think we're going to do it on Thursday, her trial was set for Thursday, as you probably know. If she gets convicted, I didn't have a choice but to send her to prison. She has no prior record. Why would you drag your daughter into that, who has your grandchild at home? What, 4 months old, 5 months old? Why would you do that? And that's a rhetorical question, Mr. Carney, because quite frankly, I'm not looking for a response at this, but I'm just scolding you because I think it's shameful for a parent to drag, and we see these cases all the time where people, they talk these young women, but to talk your own daughter into doing something like this is just absolutely disgraceful, in my opinion. Your record dates back to 2001, your criminal record. So you have a criminal history of over 25 years. This is your third conviction for aggravated trafficking. 3. You're not learning anything. So the court is going to order you to serve a minimum prison sentence of 5 years, a maximum prison sentence of 7.5 years. That has to do with Reagan Topes, as you probably are aware. And on count 2, the court's going to order you to serve 36 months, that to be served concurrent with count 1, but consecutive sentence to your current sentence. So I'm adding on 5 to 7.5 years to your current sentence. The court does find that a consecutive sentence is necessary to punish you and to protect the public from you. It is not disproportionate to the conduct or the danger that you pose to society, and this offense was committed while you were already incarcerated in the Department of Corrections. You have 0 days jail time credit. You are subject to a mandatory period of post-release control on this, as you probably already are on your other one, which means that when you are released, the Adult Parole Authority will supervise you for up to 3 years, but not less than 18 months. Ms. Stickles.
Nothing further, thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Brunner.
Not this time.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
An inmate, Kenneth Carney, was found guilty of orchestrating a plan to have his daughter smuggle 51 grams of meth into a prison using coded phone calls and a Cheetos bag drop. The jury convicted him on all charges, and he was sentenced to an additional 5 to 7.5 years, with the judge strongly condemning him for involving his daughter.